Call the meeting in order. Roll call, everyone's here. And we don't need to do the electronic, and there's no public comments. So, Davin, let's go to item number 5.
Discussion action on intermodal containers. So at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we had a presentation or a petition by the owners of Ducky's Car Wash. They purchased the property next to them, approximately 2.5 acres, I believe, and they wanted to do outdoor storage and indoor storage. In their indoor storage, they wanted to utilize intermodal containers or storage containers, like shipping containers, if you will. And there was a discussion by the Planning and Zoning Commission on whether we should continue allowing these in Harvard. There was and is a storage facility, I believe it's on Brink Street, that received approval from the city previously for indoor storage utilizing storage containers or intermodal containers. So once you start to talk about them, you start to see them all over town, not all over, but you start to notice them. And they wanted to, before they voted on allowing them there, they wanted to see some type of regulations around them, and including what zoning districts we will allow them in, whether they should be screened, painted, whether they should be utilized as indoor storage containers. On the municipal side, one thing we considered or thought about is would we receive real estate taxes from these? And Township Assessor John Clean was here and said yes, if they're permanently mounted on a foundation, concrete pad, if you will. So he didn't have an idea on how much or anything like that, but the city could realize real estate tax dollars from them. So we agreed to bring it back before Community Development Committee to discuss, and then to City Council with a petition to then create the regulations at the Planning and Zoning Commission. So outlined in the memo is just a brief overview of what they are, what people are doing with them. They're becoming very popular. They're being converted into backyard she sheds or man caves or bars and things like that.
I actually seen swimming pools too.
And I've actually had people approach me to see what type of zoning would be allowed so they could convert them into homes.
Into homes. There are, I had heard, I don't believe it's out yet, that International Code Council was actually considering creating code to regulate these as far as building safety goes.
Studio housing, right there.
Yep, housing, and I provided a link to SI Container Builds. I believe they're out of Buffalo Grove that does exactly that. Apartments, office spaces, pop-up stores. I've seen them in Chicago, utilized as pop-up stores where they're in a U shape and you can visit different shops. And so I don't think it's appropriate to just ban them outright, because there could be a good use for them and they can look.
Plus they're cost effective.
They're cost effective. They in some cases can be cheaper than a shed, and like you see in the pictures there, yes, you could tell they might be intermodal containers, but if done right, they can be unique and classy and appropriate in some cases and in some zoning districts. So those are all the things that Planning and Zoning Commission has to consider. I figure since we'll be petitioning them to start with you all, and then we'd have that petition before you at the next council meeting to have that discussion at Planning and Zoning Commission. So if you have any thoughts on them here, hey, we don't want to regulate them too much, or we do think it's appropriate to regulate them a little bit, I'll take all that into consideration to present to the Planning and Zoning Commission, just so we have ideal regulations in place for them.
So on this one, it looks like for the storage units, they would have, when they come back to planning and zoning, it would be the conditional use to be able to use them permanently on that. Correct? Am I reading this memo right?
Yes. So in some cases, a municipality might say, well, in manufacturing districts, they can be used for storage. We don't really care as long as they're not in the front yard setback. But once you get closer into the town, B2 zoning district, which is pretty much all of Route 14. You see one at the corner of 173 and Route 14 at the motorcycle shop, I believe it is.
Yeah.
We have one in the downtown, which he received approval for, Tom Johnson, right across the street from the Don Chepe grocery store there. That'll be utilized as part of his barbecue venture that he's working on. He just put up a fence around it. He recently painted his intermodal container. I'm trying to think of the address. I believe it's 113 maybe? Air Street, 113 North Air Street.
The one on that corner of Air and with the new fence?
Is that Park?
Yeah, Park, okay.
Oh, there's gonna be one of those containers in there?
Yeah, it's already
It's
there.
already there.
He did get
Oh,
approval.
I thought that was a storage for right now.
No, it's going to be, he's going to do takeout barbecue there and outside seating in that fenced-in area. That's going to be a nice little courtyard.
Now, is that on a pad or anything?
Mhm.
Okay, it
It's
is
on a
pad.
concrete pad.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'm assuming when this goes back to planning and zoning, this will also, these will have to be on pads, right? Or blacktop, some hard surface, not on dirt.
Correct.
And the same way with everything else, fenced in, like we always do.
Well, that's something to consider because some of these are taller than 6 feet. So the one on the corner of 173 and Route 14, that's over 6 feet. So do we want to, what looks better, an 8-foot fence or it painted nicely? You know, I have to find examples to present to say, you know, what would you prefer, a 8-foot fence so you don't see this container or just a nicely painted container?
Or 6 foot at least, so you see a couple of feet.
Yeah, 6 feet, just like Tomas's storage unit. He has a fence around there, but you can still see the building.
If done right, they look kind of nice.
Yeah.
I think I showed you pictures of some before.
Yep. And that's the other thing is, if done nice with windows cut into it or whatnot, do we want to allow them as sheds in backyards and residential? And how do you feel
Then
about
do we
that?
have to look into the ordinances for that? Because I know in some areas we can't have unattached structures, I thought.
Attached it like to the house?
Yeah, because don't we have to change things if we have a rule for unattached structures that we can't have them in certain subdivisions? We would have to change that.
You're allowed up to like 1,000 square.
1,000 square feet
1,000 square feet.
for a detached.
For
That might just be
accessory
that
structure.
just might be the HOA.
I
so-
can't remember, to be honest. I just
Yeah,
remember
Yeah,
it might
probably,
be
probably
all
the
the
HOA
paperwork.
if they have one.
Yeah, because like Park, at one time, there was an existing HOA in Park Point. I don't know if it still exists or
It's not
not.
there
if
I think it's
anymore.
only
enforced.
just for the sign, to be honest, to make
I don't-
sure that we were supposed to be paying in to do maintenance on the sign, but I don't think anybody ever did that.
Okay.
But I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure.
again, I just,
Because I haven't been, the husband's the one that takes care of the taxes, and I have not looked at it. I should probably look at it and try to find out more information.
yeah, so again, some of those structure rules come in specific neighborhoods. So, you know, when you look at Park Point, when you look at Shadow Creek, Shadow Crossing, you look at Country Brook, they may have their own rules that say, no, you can't have this. But as far as I know, being in real estate, the community, it's only about the square footage of the shed based upon the square footage of the home. That's how I understand it currently. So in other words, what we've done in the past is that we just wanted to make sure the shed wasn't nicer than the house. I think was the goal. That was the action. I mean, that seemed to be the flavor of the law more than anything else. You just didn't want, you know, we've got a book full of small houses here, and we just didn't want a really big shed in the back that kind of, you know, overtook. And again, the purpose, and that was for just, that's not even going into this, that's just a shed or a garage. So it would eliminate potential side commercial work too. There were some concerns about that. As the term was in Chicago, there was concerns about wrenching. You know, you put up a shed that holds 6 cars and people are wrenching in their backyard. And so the size of the shed, as I understand it, and look it up, I could be wrong, was based on the square footage of the home for aesthetics and then again, for keeping things in line.
Yeah.
Our current UDO allows for 1,000 square foot accessory structure.
Okay.
You have to meet lot coverage. And believe in like your typical R2 zoning districts, you can't cover the lot with more than 40% of rooftop. So if you're allowed 1,000 square foot accessory structure, which is large.
That is big.
But your lot coverage may only allow you to have 400 square feet.
Right. It's an average lot of 66 by 132,
Yeah.
in town. So,
Yeah.
depending on if you've got a ranch home, you're not going to be able to put something up if you've got an older two-story.
Yeah, so it all, essentially, at the end of the day, for those zoning districts that, like your B2 zoning, on 14, your downtown area, it comes down to aesthetics, and shipping containers rolling off a ship aren't typically in the best condition, or they're rusty and things like that, chipped paint, so those are all things that we have to take into consideration if allowing them, whether with a conditional use permit or not.
But you can get a brand new one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nicely painted.
Everyone got to look this over, correct? What recommendation, probably going to city council?
Yeah, I guess my only comment that I wanted to make is I would like to see something more specific when it comes to the aesthetic look of these. I would like us to be very specific, because here's the deal. It can look really nice today,
Yes.
and 5 years from now, we've got an eyesore, and if we don't have something, and I hate being this person, I'm not this
But you
person.
can also do that on a detached garage too.
Yeah, but if we do it, I just think if we're proactive, I would want something that has some teeth, but is also enforceable, and that has, and again, I almost hate being this person, because this usually isn't me, but I don't want to drive by something and have it look like crap after 5 years, and have my constituents calling me saying, Annamarie, you passed that, why didn't you think of
So
that?
you're saying like the older containers where they start rusting too because the paint chips off and
Yeah.
the rust is starting to show, stuff like that?
Yeah, so that we have something,
Nothing post-apocalyptic.
yeah. Yeah.
It could be a house with chip and paint too.
Well, we have ordinances for that too, but, yeah. Yeah, so, but I would just like to see something that would define, if we could, the aesthetics, and when we could actually say, if 30% or more of the structure looks to be peeling, damaged, or in poor condition. And I don't know if that's
I think
realistic.
on this one, it said rust, any rust.
Okay,
So that means if it's
Yeah.
rust and it's not painted.
The reason why you don't want to go with the percentage is because sometimes you might not be able to see all the sides, and they could say, well, you can see
Right.
this side.
You
this
can
side,
just
this
say
side.
any rusts.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
within,
Right, and so really it'll fall under the property maintenance code, which the city has adopted, and it could be chipped paint.
okay.
So,
As long as we've got something we could
Yeah.
stick our teeth in, or if we actually could say, that, when we say this, we're following property maintenance code, if we can refer back to that, that would be something I'd like to see.
Yep.
Because then we could actually say, when they say, well, you never told us that, no, right here, we said property maintenance code, this is, go see this part, and that's what we need to follow. Just so it's clear to everybody that,
Understand, yeah.
okay, thank you.
and the other thing is if it does end up requiring a conditional use permit, we could always recommend that as a condition on their permit, that it has to be properly maintained.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So just to be clear, in each of the zones, if we're looking at the second page, number 2, Donovan has all of the bullet points listed out. Those are acceptable as far as those requirements. Because when we petition this back to planning and zoning, we'll need to make it clear that what you want to see.
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that up. So like we discussed in the beginning with the residential, they can, again, look appropriate if done correctly, like we see in the pictures here. So perhaps that is a conditional use permit for residential. And
I don't know with you guys, but right now, I would say leave that out for right now. I like it like this right now, especially in our town. In the country, I understand that 100%, but in town, right now, I'm not a big advocate for it.
yeah, we could sort it out through planning and zoning commission and come back with.
and on the other side, I'm exactly the opposite. I'm for it because it's cost effective. If you try putting up like a 2-car garage, it's gonna be $30,000. You can get one of these for like $5,000.
I think this goes back then, in my opinion, to our assessor and making sure, I'm okay with it as long as it's taxable, because now it's a permanent structure. Now you went from a 3,000 square foot property to potentially 4,000 square foot on your property. If you're willing to do that, you're willing to pay the taxes on that. And I think, but we'd have to, make sure that it's very clear that, because I don't want someone bringing that in on a pad and saying, well, it's not permanent. That would be the thing. So that's my compromise between the two of you.
On those storage units, they're really only supported by the four corners. So why would you need a whole pad? Couldn't it be gravel underneath?
No, because then that's all animals can dig underneath.
Well, you can still put something like steel guarding.
I would want to see the full
Actually,
pad.
you want them to breathe anyway.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, and like a shed,
You can put something just like you do on the deck. You put something there so animals don't go underneath the deck.
You're gonna have to have some kind of foundation if you're gonna.
Why make
consider
it
a
more
permanent
expensive
structure.
for people?
Yeah, well, because we want, if they want to do it, we want to tax it.
And we
I
want
I know,
them right.
you can still put four corner footings in is what I'm saying. You don't have to put a whole concrete pad in. You can
Yeah,
put
the-
gravel underneath it so that.
I would say if it's going to be used for residential, even for storage, is in town. For in town, with that is, because even though you got the flooring underneath it, even though you got the corner of the footings, of the concrete footings for just the corners, you can have, yes, you can make them do what you said, but I think it'd be easier if you just throw the pad on there so you won't have the animals going underneath whatever, if it becomes a garage later on, if we do that, or right now, if this goes back, because right now it's talking about the storage units, having animals burying underneath there and become a issue.
Well, that could be underneath any deck at your house too.
Understandable, yes.
So we don't do that underneath every deck.
But that's more, and I get that, but
And that's a permanent structure. This could be a temporary thing.
Most decks are raised, though.
Yeah,
I don't know, I know you guys,
Because concrete ain't cheap having somebody put that in.
it's cheaper than blacktop right now, but, residential, I would say, I would like it like this right now, because I don't want to get too far ahead until we get this going on the commercial side, and at least until we have it down, because if we start doing this way, then we might have issues 5 years down the road where they might not be all looking the same, and then you put a container as a garage on anything, but the container doesn't match your house type thing. I just want to make, right now, and being here now for 6 years, I rather kind of keep it like this for now, and we can expand. If more people start coming in saying, no, I want to build, I want to do these containers, then we can always change this. 6 years I've been here, we've changed ordinance all the time.
Well, I know. All right.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, ladies first.
I guess my concern is I'm a rule follower, and so I see it's not allowed. I'm not going to come to the city and ask. And so when I see prohibited, I automatically say, I throw my hands up and I say, oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to build something else. So that would be and I totally see your
No.
point, because I've been here a little longer. But I guess that's my sticking point, is prohibited means that we're not even going to consider.
Yeah, I would never
And-
never vote for prohibited.
You
Because
know,
it would only
and that's
be
where it is now.
Commercial usage.
The
But
commercial,
I
we're
can see
fine.
both of your
This is
guys'
the
so
res-
maybe it's changing in verbiage would be better? Like, not at this
Just
time, or
just
not
like
currently
fences on the corner
considered?
lot, you restricted the whole thing where you could just said, okay, 10 feet from the guy's driveway.
Just because it's
So-
prohibited doesn't mean they can't go for a variance.
I know, but then it
That's
costs
true.
more money. It
Most
costs
people
extra
don't
500
really
bucks.
think about it if it says prohibited, because they're gonna think it's only for commercial things or
Yeah, but
out in the country.
it's
So I
because
can
of the
understand that
expense.
part.
But we've also had the driveway issue when I first got in city council 6 years ago with extending it out, and they would come for variance, and we kept accepting it, so we changed in the code, in the ordinance, and also to a point, which is now the driveway issue, ordinance right now, how it is right now.
The So you could make it as a conditional use permit where it's not prohibited, but it does require conditional use. They have to go through the process of getting location, appearance and things like that approved. by-
Why couldn't you just say 10 foot from the neighbor's lot and it has to have a 6-foot fence up or something so you can't see it?
I think that goes with
Why do you have
Matt.
to get
I
a
think that's-
conditional use and ask for
Because each
for
location is
variance?
different.
Yeah, I think that goes with Matt's thing, is that every location is different, and so I would, that makes me very comfortable, a conditional use permit. I think that tells our community we're being progressive, and again, because I've had people ask me about this, and like, rule follower, nope, you can't do that. You can't do that in Harvard. And so this way, I can tell people, hey, guess what I found out? You can, if you really want to, and you're willing to put in the work. And you're willing to research and that kind of thing. And we might have some cool she sheds then. And you know, and again, thinking forward. But I do think there needs to be some regulation, because there's always that guy who's
Well, yeah,
going to
like you
put up.
say, but you can make the regulation, you don't have to be a conditional use. You can just set the regulation. Like if you wanted to have a 6-foot fence up, cover it up so people don't see it, or 10 feet from the lot line, you can make restrictions like that instead of making everybody get paid to have a variance, $500. Not everybody has the extra $500.
If they're putting up a shed, they probably do.
No, I mean, if they're talking about a container.
Yeah.
Because
That
they're
goes
really
back
not
to,
that expensive.
permits. Deanna,
We will present both sides to Planning and Zoning Commission, let them figure out the best path to take and make that recommendation to City Council, and we could do this all over again.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
and then with one more thing on that concrete pad, sometimes you have an elevated section where one side's higher and you got to elevate it up higher, so you make a column for it too, on on 2 of the corners, if it's on level ground. So that's why you can't really say a pad, because the ground might not work. If you're on a slope, say, slight slope.
Good point. Construction questions. I'm not a concrete worker. Don't pretend to be.
And then
But I think, Donovan, back to your point, other than the prohibitive thing, I think that with the commercial, I think that sounds, to me, that sounds good.
Thank you. And then,
I have a question about that aesthetics and safety, depending on where it is, like if it's on a commercial lot, would they be able to paint a mural? Or would that come under the technical definition of graffiti? Because it's not a uniform color.
I think we would encourage a mural. You know, if it's permitted in B2 zoning or something like that, and they want to do a mural that it's street facing and it allows some art in a commercial district, I think that's always encouraged, just to create that creative economy.
Plus, it looks nice if they had a nice looking one.
So is there a way we could just define graffiti as unintentional damage graffiti kind of thing, just so that.
I mean, there's good graffiti technically,
Yeah,
but it's really not a mural.
yeah, so just,
Not vulgar.
just so when you take it back to the committee, just so that term is more well-defined, so that we're not eliminating modern art. Thanks, Lori.
Good catch.
I've seen some really good stuff, like in different neighborhoods of like, Day of the Dead stuff, and technically it's graffiti, but at the same time, it's more muralistic art, so.
You're totally right, yeah. Good catch.
So I don't know if that needs a motion, really. We'll just present a petition.
I'll say is it more, because it's going to city council for us to recommend and go to, yeah. So I guess it's direct staff to send it to city council.
Thank you.
All right. Line item number 6, discussion action on cellular towers.
So this was presented to Planning and Zoning Commission as a text amendment in the Unified Development Ordinance, and started because there was a proposal from a wireless carrier to install a 200-foot monopole in the downtown next to the grain silos, and it had gotten pretty far with a former employee. And when it got to our department and we saw renderings, we said, this is a pretty tall tower in our downtown, and we don't have any regulations covering wireless antennas or towers. It was sent to Gary Rozadowski, our engineer for the city, and he said, what regulations am I reviewing this to? You know, we could look at structural and things like that based on engineering standards, but there should be more, and we agreed. So we presented what's before you before Planning and Zoning Commission. They had a couple changes that they would like to see. Essentially, as it relates to the downtown, we'd like to push carriers to install antennas on top of an existing city-owned assets like the water towers, which is typical. And it's typical for them to pay rent to a municipality to utilize a water tower or other city property, which the property next to the grain silos was owned by the city. We were going to receive rent from that. But we just didn't know if it was appropriate to have a 200-foot monopole right in our downtown.
Was it actually taller than 200 foot? I thought the other antenna part was going to be 98 feet. Of that, so it'll be 290. It was going to be almost 300 feet tall.
In our downtown.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not the Space Needle, Seattle.
right, yeah.
They couldn't make it into a roller coaster ride? Well, darn.
Yeah, some municipalities do require that they look like trees. I've seen examples where they look like a cactus. But we
The
just
tower looks like a catfish?
Cactus.
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 It's kind of cool though, so that way it doesn't disturb the landscape and it's more natural.
Yeah.
I think it's just 3 points coming up, 1 point and then 3.
Oh,
Yep.
really?
Yes.
In my research, I found
Not quite.
Unfortunately.
none in the shape of a cow, so we couldn't capitalize on that for milk days.
How about udders?
No udders. No. Utterly ridiculous. So, I crossed out a section in here, I believe it was section 5. That was some comments by Commissioner Albertson related to exceptions. He felt that we should take out the exceptions, that there should be a say by Planning and Zoning Commission or the city overall that any type of tower should require a conditional use permit, just so we can, again, protect the overall look of a area or aesthetics of an area.
Makes perfect sense.
So before the next, so Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with the changes. It will go to City Council for final vote, but to legal counsel before that, just to make sure we're doing the right thing legally. And then an ordinance, and then a clean version will go to you at the next council.
So 2 councils meetings, we'll have the clean version coming back to us. We just,
No, at the next one.
so next one, okay. Do you guys see anything else you would want to change, add, modify?
I was just happy to see one at all.
Nothing jumped out, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're looking at the residential?
6, the very last, antennas on existing towers. The antenna height for a cellular tower is a little low on what the standard is. I believe the average antenna height is 60 to 100 feet.
Which one?
Number 6.
6
So right after the
bottom.
Third
cross-out
down on the
stuff.
page.
antennas on existing towers.
Oh, well, they could only go up 30 feet?
Yes.
Yes.
So occasionally, we will have a wireless carrier that either is renting space on a tower that's owned by a city or the municipality in any town, and they'll say, hey, we want to replace our equipment. They submit building plans. The antenna could be taller than what they have existing. So what this says is, as long as it's not, as long as it doesn't exceed 30 feet, they don't need to go back before city council or anything like that.
So anything over is just, it would be a variance.
That
Deb,
sounds-
how often, I know, because you said
Sounds
something about
fair.
62 feet, how often have you seen that?
Twice.
Okay.
There's two right now. One in the proposal and one that's permanent. We're about to renew the contract on one, but they're not asking for a change in their antenna. They're gonna leave it as is.
So for our city, it's right now one, and then the other one, I know which one you're talking about. But other towns, are they more than 30 feet usually on these
Probably.
buildings? So I think we probably should increase it then, so they're not, coming back for variance every time. Ends up being like the driveway issue again, like before your time, Donovan, but yeah.
No, I was here for the beginning of that. That's why we changed it, yeah.
We changed it right before you got here.
No, it
Nope.
seemed like every meeting I had in the beginning there had a driveway variance, so we changed it to allow up to 9 feet expansion without a variance.
There was another one we actually did then before that, because we did it twice, I think, with the driveway.
Okay, that's noted.
I have on the elevation, Alderman Perkins.
Okay.
And we can leave it at 30. Let me look into it just a little bit.
Yeah, if you will actually that, and then if you see it more common at that, I guess then change it for, bring it to city council then. And then that'll be our final look at it.
We can change it prior to the next meeting
Yep.
if we feel that it needs to be increased.
Okay.
Rocking and rolling.
And that's it on that, and I guarantee you'll start seeing antennas and towers everywhere you drive now, more than you used to, like I have.
We're gonna want the tall towers.
Anything else on this? No. All right. Number 7, strategic vision.
The only thing I have on that is part of the strategic vision for economic development side was coming up with a downtown master plan, which you all had budgeted $50,000 for this fiscal year. So we have a rough draft of a request for proposals done for that, and that's being tightened up. That'll go out within the next couple of months so that.
This is a revision from the one that before, right? Because there's technically one, so when I was looking at this morning, it said progress milestones, what we did when we redid the strategic vision, says we already completed the downtown master plan, but I knew you guys were doing another one.
Yes. I don't know how old the original one is.
Yeah,
I think that was prior to the streetscape.
yeah.
Way,
Yeah,
maybe not,
So that's what they even used when we redid
But I know it
this
was
a
a
couple
long
of years
time
ago
ago.
as well.
yes. And I know it was quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
So that RFP will come before this committee, just so you see the scope of work, what we're hoping to get out of it. And it's basically just guiding the future of the downtown for a destination for events and visitors, restaurants, that types of thing. Those types of things, property acquisition for additional parking in the future, all those types of things that need to be considered as this downtown starts to grow and expand.
I don't know if any of you guys, I know next month the mayor wants to do a city as a whole and go through this for the newer people on the city council. But I don't know if any of you, especially you two, have you guys been able to look at the new strategic vision yet?
New what?
The new vision that we have for the city?
I haven't seen it all, no.
Okay. You have?
We'll get you a copy.
Yeah. From what I was looking at this morning, we're pretty much on track right now with this committee and actually a lot of the other ones too.
And as long as you're talking about, is this the one online, right?
Yes.
This is
Okay,
online.
just want to make sure,
Yeah,
because when you say
it's-
the new one. No, just,
Yep,
I'm like,
this is the one right here, yes.
Yeah, okay,
This
just
is
making sure I
Well, it's
wasn't
newer
mixed
from
up.
when I first got, we had the other one that they did in 2015 and I
Yeah.
got in 2019. And then we updated in 2023, right, the fall? Yeah.
So when the mayor has the committee of the whole in July, we plan to not just present this, but we'll have a PowerPoint presentation that highlights, what the goals were, what we've accomplished, and what's in progress, and then what we still haven't gotten to yet. So it makes it a little more clear for those of you who haven't been around until recently, so that you know exactly where we're at.
Gotcha.
That's all I have for strategic vision.
Any of you guys have anything? Lori, have you noticed anything? All right. All right, line number 8, new business. Any new business?
The only thing I have is, in front of you is just a binder, Alderwoman Lancaster and Alderman Perkins, you may already have it. Were these handed out previously?
I thought this was his.
These are just before and after shots of what Ann Nutley with code enforcement has accomplished. She does one of these once a year, right? About once a year. And so just to show, you know, some of the improvements that her code enforcement has made to some of the properties in town, just as an FYI, so, you know, if you can kind of have an idea of what's required for her work and how much she's been able to accomplish.
And some of these are big wins for her and some that are still ongoing. She's been working on one right now that's been in court for almost 2 years. So some work out really well where you send a notice and they bring it into compliance, no problem. Others, you're dealing with an abandoned property that, like the city council is aware of, 307 Grant Street, that sat around for a long time before the city could obtain it and then sell it off at auction. And then others, you've got homeowners in the house that dig in their heels and want to fight, and in 99% of the time, Ann wins the case, but it had gone through court for a year, or like the latest one, it's been in there for almost 2 years. So each one of these is a big win, though, and then you take on top of that all the lawns that get cut when she sends out a notice, or the vehicle's moved off the lawn, or the garbage that gets picked up, which could fill up, you know, a large book, but these are some
She
of the
vying
big
for a
ones.
raise, is that what you're telling us?
No, that's like pictures. Pictures of it. They're easy.
I'm being sarcastic. She does a good job.
Anyone else have any new business to bring up?
Actually, I wouldn't mind, maybe not right away, but maybe looking at that fence ordinance again on those corner lots.
Okay.
Because I think restricted it all together, because I think Lisa, the one other alderman, she says she gets people asking her all the time, but they just don't want to do it because of the cost, and they're afraid to come to the committee meeting and the extra costs. Instead of, you know, I think that one yard in Park Point, that's when you guys changed it on the corner lots because of the vision of the neighbor's driveway. But if you have a restriction, keep it like 10 feet away from the neighbor's driveway so there's no visibility issue. Why would it be a problem? That's all I got. I mean, we used to allow it before. Why restrict it because of one person? If we just made better guidelines. That's just my thought.
Oh, well,
Because, you know, why, that's an extra $500.
Yeah, and it kind of.
And then you got to go through all the process and everything else. A lot of people wouldn't do it just because of that.
And what we do in a lot of these cases is survey what other communities are doing, present it to you all on this committee. You say, yes, we want to petition Planning and Zoning Commission to change it or come up with better regulations so it's not a conditional use permit each time or what have you, so staff can certainly.
Yeah, and you got to have a meeting every time and, you know.
well, I guess maybe have staff look into other communities there, what their ordinances on these fences.
Yeah, maybe like, when she has time, Donovan's not going to be here, so.
You're still here
See
for a
what
little
we can
bit
be more-
longer.
Less
We
restrictive,
can
but still consider your neighbors at the same time. And visibility, of course.
I do have one question. Do you know when the Starbucks is going to be completed?
In August.
August?
IDOT probably pushed it back.
Does it
It
seem like
did,
it was
yeah.
July?
Of course it did.
IDOT did, unfortunately, I believe they got their approval now, but it just held them up from being able to do work in the right of way, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so August is the goal. They were hoping to open up in July, it got pushed back. They are hiring people, which is nice to see. We've received permits for a wireless cellular store going in behind, a brand-new building behind Walgreens on the vacant lot there.
Oh, that right there? So right when you turn into there, there's actually gonna be something going in there now?
And
That's
that
good.
hopefully will help fill up the rest of that behind Dunkin' Donuts. We talked to the owner of that recently. He's talking to other retailers to fill up the rest of the vacant land there. But it'll be a standalone wireless cellular store. We can't say the name yet.
Is it right there on the corner, right there, of Airport and the drive into it off of Airport? Is that what you're talking about? Right behind, okay,
Yeah, it's a private road
yeah.
behind the bank and stuff. But
Yeah. So not over where we approved the owner to put a storage unit in there and a strip mall that never came about with the
Yes.
Dunkin' Donut.
Yep.
Because that's the only thing that came about was the Dunkin' Donut, all the three things we approved.
Right, yeah, so directly behind Walgreens, as you pull into that commercial subdivision, on the right-hand side will be the wireless cellular store. So the first round of reviews have gone back to them, we're waiting to get them back, so that's good.
Anything else?
Nothing else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
I'll make a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.